Can you hear us now?
I'll make her one.
Okay.
Can you hear us? Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Does anybody have any comments or changes they would like to make to the minutes from the last meeting?
Mr. Whalen's name was spelled incorrectly and I have fixed it in the meeting notes. It is spelled WHALEN.
Excellent. All right. Well, I motion to approve the minutes with that change. Can I get a second? A second. Excellent. All right. Well, is there any housekeeping that TJPDC wants to do about anything before we jump into paving rural roads? All right. Paving rural roads, who's presenting to us today?
So I'm Peter Krebs from the Piedmont Environmental Council. I'm going to start off with some great news. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I don't have anything close to an hour. So when I first saw it, like I thought it said 10 minutes. I'm like, that sounds about right, but no, nowhere close to an hour. And unless we want to have a fulsome discussion, that would be great as well. The Piedmont Environmental Council is a nonprofit environmental group that represents 9 counties, basically following the 29 and 15 corridor from the Potomac to the James River. So starting in the north with Loudoun County, dropping down to Albemarle. A number, but not all of the TJPDC counties are in our service area. Fluvanna, Nelson, and Louisa are not, but Greene, Albemarle, Orange is in your service area, right? That's part of ours. So there's a lot of overlap. As part of, I'm a planner and I focus on both transportation and health and wellness and the intersection that creates quality of life. PC is predominantly known as an anti-sprawl organization. We've been working for about 50 years, and we're best known for our work to preserve rural areas and the rural way of life. However, we also do work in urban areas within our service area to create quality places for people to live, so there's less need to sprawl into rural areas. As part of my work, I run a local alliance called the Piedmont Mobility Alliance that pulls together organizations, agencies, groups, and individuals, really diverse from between Charlottesville and Albemarle County. Actually, my service area kind of lines up with the MPO, so if the MPO changes, it could pull in Greene as well. So when I say agencies, it's anywhere from DCR to city, county, TJPDC, but also like the health district is very active in our work. Organizations range from my group to small neighborhood associations all the way up to Centera, which is technically an organization. Then also our work spans, it's diverse in terms of types of projects that we undertake. So we're very active in the promoting community engagement in the LRTP, but we also work on small trails that are a quarter mile long. So lots of different types of work. And as I alluded to, we don't make a distinction really between what's important for the rural areas and what's important for the urban areas. We have a holistic view that says vibrant urban communities need thriving, economically, vital rural areas where we can get our food, forests, clean water, clean air, all that good stuff. In our spring Mobility Alliance meeting, which was on April 25th, we had a group from Loudoun County, which is called the Loudoun Preservation and Conservation Coalition, who came and gave a presentation to us about their work to be very methodical and intentional about how Loudoun County handles its rural and unpaved roads. Lucinda was there, Bella was there. I don't think Kevin was there, but Jessica was there. So a couple board of supervisor members, it was a really great discussion. And so Lucinda just invited me to come and share a few highlights from that discussion. In the end, I'm gonna just share a link on the Zoom meeting to a video of the presentation. The Loudoun folks were extremely generous. They sat down for interviews with myself and Lonnie Murray, who some of you may know. Also there are very detailed meeting notes. Also, the coalition has a white paper that is excellent about intentional handling of rural roads, and that'll also be in this suite of documents that I share. So everything makes sense so far? Okay, so in Loudoun County, and I think it's pretty consistent throughout PC service area. I'd imagine it's similar for you all here. They see a lot of different resources embodied in their rural and unpaved roads. Having a road be unpaved, so in a way that's a bit of a misnomer on the agenda. It's almost like not paving rural roads ought to be the agenda item. Reasons for not paving include protecting a rural way of life. That's kind of the primary one that drives a lot of other things. It controls speed, limits growth and development, they have extraordinary scenic value. They have health and recreational value, both for the residents on the road, but also for the localities and region as a whole. And as a result of all of those things, they embody a very significant economic resource that ought to be handled intentionally. So they work very closely with VDOT and their own residency. They urge VDOT and the Loudoun Board of Supervisors to apply numerous metrics in deciding whether or not to pave roads. Those include the ones that I mentioned, but they also factor in community feedback, both through their petitions toward paving, but also through the interaction between the Board of Supervisors and the staff. So those are two channels that paving opportunities pop onto the radar. And it's pretty similar to how it works in Albemarle County. Some of you probably know, Kevin knows best of all, that Albemarle has recently tweaked its policies for paving and raising the bar a little bit about whether a petition is considered successful or not. I definitely support those changes. One of their key things is they established with VDOT that the VDOT's mandate is not to pave rural roads. VDOT's mandate is explicitly to improve rural roads, and that may or may not equal paving. Traditionally, it often is, but it doesn't have to necessarily be. From the county leadership perspective, they have become more circumspect about paving because they see proper maintenance as way cheaper than paving, even across a long span of time. And then finally, our discussion spoke a little bit about conflicts among different users of rural roads. That could mean cyclists, runners, walkers, equestrians, locals, non-locals. And those conflicts sort of coalesced among a couple key points. One is safety or perceptions of safety, and I'll tell a fun story about that in a second. Etiquette, which is closely related with safety. Parking also, which is a cultural etiquette issue. Sharing the road or not sharing the road, and the idea of that the resource of an unpaved road is a fragile one that can go away for a number of different reasons. So one example that is not good is when somebody comes to run or to ride a horse, for example, and they're using private property that's not the right of way, that is without permission, or creating bottlenecks or harming sightlines. There's been some issues of the sightlines here in Albemarle County. But sort of what we all agreed on in terms of resolving these is that communication is so important. Both that could mean physical communication via signage, but also for advocates such as myself, communicating what good behavior looks like for people who they're using a public resource, but they're kind of guests, and it is erring on the side of courtesy is the way to go. That's basically what I had to report, but I'll close with just a fun story, because why not? I haven't had a chance to tell this story in a work context. So I'm a runner, biker. I become a biker so I could understand the point of view of cyclists, but I was running on the gravel roads in Amherst County one time, and came around a curve, a truck came around the curve, and it was like an OS moment. What am I going to do? My policy generally is I don't share the road. I yield the road, step aside, step over the ditch. And this time I had to full on dive across the ditch. And I was fine, but I spooked the cattle in the pasture. And I don't know if you all have seen full-grown cows running, but it's a little comical, actually. So they were pounding across the field, and a few got back on my feet and started running. I resolved to just breathe it out and let it go, but then I could hear the motorist coming back behind me, and I recognized the sound of their truck, and I was like, oh man, he's coming back to finish me off. And he pulled up beside me and rolled down his window with just the most profuse apology that was quite unexpected and not even necessary. But what he said is he came around the corner and the light glinted and he couldn't see me until the last second. And I just told him that it takes a real adult to come back and tell somebody that you've done the wrong thing and to apologize. And so for me, that happened before I started this job, but it really just undermined or underlined my opinion that it's important to communicate, it's important to understand different points of view, and it's important to listen, because our assumptions are very often not correct. So with that, I'm happy to either answer questions about things I've heard from the Loudoun folks or from other folks in the community, or, as you all wish, move on to other parts of the agenda.
I have a few comments and questions.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming, Peter. And I wish I had been able to be there at that meeting you had with the folks from Loudon, but part of why I wanted to have this discussion was because, as you pointed out, we've had a lot of not controversy, but indecision about how to treat the unpaved roads in
Right.
Albemarle County. And with some people saying we need to start making things all unpaved and then we get the push to pave roads. I looked at the map of unpaved roads in Albemarle County that VDOT puts out, and I looked at Loudoun County, which, you know, is pretty close to DC urban area, and I was really shocked at the number of unpaved roads they have left.
It's something like 250 miles of
Yeah,
unpaved road.
and here we're, you know, what I would think of as a more rural county, we have much fewer unpaved roads, and so I was struck by that. I was wondering how they were able to do that for one thing, but then also in the county, if I've had this conversation with Carrie, we get a certain amount of money from the state that can only be used, or I was always under the impression it can only be used to pave unpaved roads. And I'm wondering if Loudoun County said anything about this, or Carrie, if you have knowledge of what, if that money is still going to Loudoun County, and if so, how are they able to use that? What are they using it for?
Okay, so I don't know the answer to that because I just don't know. That's it's a reasonable question. I think that one thing that they said though is to not be spooked by use it or lose it. That, you know, you shouldn't necessarily go use, you know, monies that are not needed. I mean, it's not this, but I think planning practice sometimes shows us that in the transportation space, projects that are overscoped can do harm. So this would be an example that what they did say, and you know, I'm aware of who I'm in the room with. I'm probably the least knowledgeable person in some ways, but one of the things they talked about is changing the aggregate mix as a way to improve longevity of the roads. A couple of other notes that came to me that I was also thinking about is one of the metrics that they have that I'm not sure we're doing as good a job locally as we might, is whether thinking about a road of significance or a route of significance, and whether a segment of unpaved is part of a significant rural cultural experience. I mean, you know, you look at the county's paving list and some of them are like, that's a road that its main job is to get people from, you know, up to a church. That's its whole job. Like, that's different than a road like Ridge Road that is part of a cultural experience. One other secret to the success in Loudoun County that I think might be rare in the US is that those 250 miles many of them are being actively defended by the residents of those roads. Because I think it's safe to say that Loudoun's equestrian community is more organized than the one that we have here in Albemarle County, although it's significant here. I think that's one little difference. And sorry, just one other note, and actually I'd like to go back to Kevin, because you're kind of the first that I'm following, is that I think we have a very good example within the TJPDC and the Greene Springs. Like, that area is very, very holistically thinking about the role of ag and culture and paving. And not only that, but the road segments are not handled all the same in Green Springs. Like a lot of the low areas are paved, generally speaking. The steep areas are paved, generally speaking. But the whole of Jack Jewett Road is not necessarily paved. So, yeah.
Carrie, did you have anything to add about the?
Yeah, I've been working kind of behind the scenes to get an answer to that question. It's been a little bit, I haven't gotten a definite answer yet. I have reached out to Loudon, our folks at Loudon, and I'm trying to set up a meeting with them. And I did reach out to our policy department to see if I can get kind of an answer for that, but as of yet, I have not gotten one. So from what I understand, at this point, until I hear otherwise, is that that money, that funding is just dedicated to hard surfacing gravel roads. But I do believe Loudon is still receiving that funding because it's tied to how many miles of gravel road that you have. So they should still be receiving that money. Where it's going or how it's getting used, that's a question that I also still have. Because it would be nice, in our opinion too, if we can do for maintenance instead of necessarily hard surface.
But that's our issue, and you mentioned that a lot of the defenders of those unpaved roads in Loudoun County are the residents, and we do have that in Albemarle County.
Right.
But we also have a lot of residents that are like, I can't stand this road in the condition it's in anymore, the washboarding effect that they get, and so they end up pushing for it to get paid because they don't think that, and it's not that, you know, VDOT can't get out there and take away that washboard as regularly as they would like it to happen, or the dust issue also, which is what you can really do about the dust issue, but we do get that a lot, is that these houses that are close to the dirt, that are close to the unpaved roads, are just getting covered in dust, and everything they own is covered in dust because of that. And so they're like, my only response is that I want to get this road paved.
Right. Yeah, and they were very emphatic that living in the rural area does not mean that one should have a second-class transportation system. In fact, folks are trying to run, you know, almost like industrial level stuff, driving huge trucks and so forth. And if we lose the economic viability of the rural area, it's game over for those of us trying to stop sprawl. So it is a complicated issue. So although I do think that addressing as much as we can, addressing conditions like ones you described is sort of definitely a level up compared to piling up miles of paved road. Carrie, I've been wondering, is it true that the funds for that those funds are use it or forever lose it, that you can't have them the next year if you don't spend them all in 1 year?
No, yeah, they're not using it. That's
But they'll just build up in the 6-year plan, and eventually you'll have
that's
millions of dollars that you can still only use to pave unpaved roads or hard surface.
yeah, which now having Albemarle kind of joined that conversation with Loudoun County, I think a couple of Scott's counties that was one, it's becoming kind of a bigger conversation now. Well, what should we do? And I think it's important to have y'all's input in that conversation, so we can kind of figure out what we need to change.
So something, this is saying something that we need to push at the higher level. Central office. And you know, this even gets into this question where we get these constant calls from people that live on paved roads that are like, my road's falling apart, why can't you come out here and maintain this? And the reason we can't is because we have money to fix their roads. Well, if we got all that money sitting in an unpaved road fund, seems like that should be an easy decision. You move it from an unpaved road fund maintain paved road. It's not an easy decision.
Folks over here. I would suspect it's not.
Yeah, well, I know it's not, but it seems very reasonable to ask at least.
But to that point, I mean, certainly from a like a smart growth perspective, being able to direct transportation maintenance resources toward where transportation maintenance is needed, full stop, without like having separate buckets would seem preferable to me. And then through triage, if a perfectly level, runs level, drains nicely, 3-mile run a road can stay unpaved, why pave it when we're not doing as well with, a high traffic road that's having maintenance issues that are totally different. Like, I would love to be in a world where, maintenance dollars go to where they're needed the most.
Peter, have you seen wedding venues, breweries, bed and breakfasts, those particular industries, are they typically one way towards getting roads paved, or do they want to also rule for that business model for their wedding venues and things like that?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't really have scientific data to back that up, but and that's also complicated because especially, I don't know, I mean, probably many of you know, with PC we're often challenging whether viticultural or cidery or other types of operations are ag operations. We support those. If something has a row of grapes to give a winey vibe, but it's really an event venue out in the countryside, we tend to not support those sorts of things. But I think our concern as advocates in getting that type of operation approved is that it can indeed drive, well, first of all, the existing infrastructure may not be appropriate when that facility goes in, which on the surface, like in the short term, that presents safety issues, reasons to not locate that enterprise there. And then, yeah, being a driver for that improvement, which then is a camel's notice for other kinds of sprawl. One of the reasons why, I mean, sadly, Kevin stepped out right when I was talking about this, but I think Kevin, the county, Albemarle's new approach to requiring a larger number of signatories is partly intended to prevent a single large player showing up and being like, I'm one of 5 landowners on the road. 20% of us want, the road to be paved. The same is true for a speculative developer. So as you're having conversations with residents about whether the road ought to be paved, having more of a sort of one resident or one parcel, one vote approach, rather than saying this gigantic landowner or this economically empowered landowner is driving this conversation. Yeah, Loudon has a lot of ecotourism as well, and they have wineries and stuff, and they're choosing the path that says the rural road is part of the rural experience, and if it means our folks have to drive slow to get to the winery, it's worth it.
We consider it one. I mean, if a landowner owns a bunch of parcels, we still only give them one vote.
Yeah.
In our petition thing. We did that with the one, we recently did one down south, connecting between, I don't think it's route, down by Route 20, I can't remember the name of it, but John Grissom, it's like 12 parcels and 40% of the land, and the other 30 landowners. The other.
So apart from justice, we don't want to incentivize like speculative subdivision, which this policy neatly, avoids. And like we're one person, one vote. Democracy is good, but let's be real about what is one person. Yeah. So.
Peter, you talked about the health and economic value for these roads. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so so my in-laws live in Fluvanna County, and on a rural road, it is paved, but it is a rural road, and every night they go for a walk on their road. So we've always known that there's a close link between active lifestyles and physical and emotional health. And that's really been underlying since the pandemic. But I think also there's an idea that folks in rural areas have access to unlimited outdoors and good places to take in fresh air. And for my in-laws, that simply is not the case. The road is where they go for a walk. And so I think right at the local level, it's really important for folks to have a good place to walk, especially because they're not going to have a walkable park or something like that. So the road becomes a de facto park. But then I think if you zoom out to like the county level or the regional level, rural roads provide a calm, quiet outdoor space for recreation. I mean, I'm here because my in-laws are here, but also the beauty of the surrounding areas around Charlottesville are a big reason why I'm here. But you actually don't really, I think, need to take anybody's word for it. There's a lot of money that comes from the awareness that rural areas are a healthy place to be and a healthy place to recreate. I mean, if you drop, any of the free publications here in Charlottesville on the ground, it's going to open to an ad that shows somebody walking in an outdoor space. So Loudoun County is pretty intentional, and so are we intentional about promoting themselves as a tourist destination. But Loudoun actually leverages its rural roads as part of its tourism package. So for example, they just hosted a gravel bike riding national class race. And the gravel bike riders, they are athletes, but they're also athletes that are going to spend a bunch of money when they're visiting the locality from across the area. And so typically those events are held in like Oregon or Iowa or somewhere like that. It was pretty cool or upstate New York. It was pretty cool to see that come to Virginia. So
I ran Dick's Woods Road first time ever, all my years here. I run here sometimes, but I did it on a Sunday a few weeks ago, a full length from Miller School all the way out to 151.
Okay, you must be fit.
I was shocked by the hundreds of people running and walking and biking that road on that Sunday. It was unbelievable, the number of people recreating and just passing constantly. I saw 5 times as many groups of people walking, running, biking than I did cars.
Yeah. So I think, so I mentioned Green Springs as an example, like a success story. I think Dick Woods Road is also a success story in certain ways. It exhibits some quality pieces. Number one, it's on the county's radar as something that's an important resource to protect. The Board of Supervisors always knows that. They always mention, anytime you talk about unpaved roads, Dick Woods Road comes out. And part of that is because the local high school cross-country team uses it for their training. Then when you look at the sort of execution of Dick Woods Road, a nonprofit partner, in this case, the Miller School, allocated some land for a designated parking area that they also do litter control. So if you're going, I don't know if you did it this way, but most people that go to Dick Woods have a place to park, so it's guaranteed they're not going to annoy the landowners by parking. So that's a successful piece.
Except that parking area only fits like maybe 15 cars.
Right.
And there's easily like 50 cars that want to use that on a Saturday.
That's a post-pandemic phenomenon. And so our answer is to always hopefully have multiple locations to spread these out. Green Springs also, the local community has the local running community has agreement with the local church to borrow their parking lot. But that's like within the community, there has to be good communication, because it's they're able to go there due to the grace of the adjoining landowners. So it's so important to maintain that relationship. Dick Woods Road also is kind of neat because it doesn't necessarily have to perform hardcore transportation duty, because Plank Road is right there. So that's another reason why it's like, you could say, okay, we can, from a transportation network perspective, we can live without Dick Woods being paved. Where another location, it may be a really important throughway, you know, I mean, so, yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions from here? Thank you for, we appreciate you coming all the way out.
Yeah.
We learned a lot from that. And do you have do you have a page dedicated to your organization, or a brochure specifically dedicated to the preservation of rural roads, or?
Well, I think we don't have that, but we have a dedicated web page about the conversation with the Loudoun advocates. So that's what I was going to share into the chat, and that has resources, including their white paper, which is quite good. So I'll put it in the chat and also email it to you.
Yeah,
you forward
and
it
I'll
to someone.
forward it to the committee.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, if it's okay, I'd like to hang out for just a little while and just hear the work.
Thank you again. Sandy, you're going to tell us all about the technical assistant grant.
Yes, I am, and I think Lucinda's got a PowerPoint that she's going to pull up so I can share that with you. So for those of you, we've mentioned this across the, at various points in conversations that we have, but the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment has a GAP Technical Assistance Grant program that might be of interest to some of you as far as building capacity for some of your local planning efforts. The MPO is currently working under them with a technical assistance grant for developing an accessibility planning process. So this is really focused on developing a process to use to prioritize needs and projects within our MPO, but they have a couple of different components. So I wanted to go through these with you in case any of you all might be interested in taking advantage of this for your localities. So there are a couple of goals of this technical assistance gap funding. It's to support the development of multimodal transportation systems, encourage the use of innovation and best practices to improve efficiency. So looking at new data sources, intelligent transportation systems, that kind of thing. It was really focused on this third bullet, promoting coordination between land use and transportation planning. One of the big reasons they started sort of developing this program was based on the original regulations around the urban development areas, to help support localities and really planning to coordinate their land use and transportation planning to develop efficiencies and infrastructure investment. So it certainly will support those efforts. And then also to help inform the infrastructure and policy considerations that go into the state transportation plan, which is referred to as VTrans. And for those of you that don't have designated urban development areas, one of the challenges you might have with Smart Scale is that the way like projects are identified as being a VTrans need, which is required in order to apply for Smart Scale, a project has to meet a VTrans need. So if you're in a rural area and you don't have these designated UDAs or growth areas that meet the definition in the federal code, you're going to really limit your eligibility for what kinds of projects will be eligible for Smart Scale. So this is one way where you can support the development of some of these established growth areas in order to be able to be eligible for additional funding for infrastructure. These are the types of technical assistance that are available to local governments. Conduct multimodal planning within existing or planned UDAs or growth areas. So for those of you in Fluvanna and Louisa, you might recognize this. This was the Badahat Gateway study that we referenced when we were developing the scope for the Zion Crossroads plan, was a GAP technical assistance grant. So that is one example of where they were able to go in and help develop some really significant recommendations around multimodal improvements in a designated area. There's this second component, which is developing and evaluating strategies to address emerging planning issues. People are doing that in different ways. Developing an accessibility planning process. So if you want to include transportation in your comprehensive plans, or you want to develop a planning process focused around transportation, this could be an opportunity to get some technical assistance. And then the fourth one is conducting multimodal planning outside of an urbanized area. So maybe there's a town or some sort of activity center or something like that that you want to do some multimodal planning around. The availability for the amount of technical assistance you are eligible for will vary based on the component. One thing I think is probably going to be true, I don't know because I've only applied for one kind of these grants, but you're not actually putting together a scope of work and asking for an amount. You are telling, as part of this application, you are telling OIP what it is that you need the technical assistance for, and they will help you refine the scope. So you don't have to actually say, I need $100,000 or I need $75,000. You basically tell them, this is what we would like to do with the funding, and they'll help you refine the scope and work to procure consultants. There is an application deadline of October 31st, 2022. There's no local match requirement associated with this, so you don't have to bring any funding to the table. You will need a letter of support from a governing body. Basically, that just says that they know that you're applying for this and will support it. It's actually one of the simplest applications I've ever submitted. It's very simple because, again, they're trying to support the development of additional capacity for localities. But certainly if this is something that you are interested in exploring and would like support from the PDC to develop a scope or something like that, we're happy to support anybody in that sense. And then we can send out the link to the website for more information. But happy to answer any questions, but mostly just want to make sure this is on your radar. Yes, Tom.
Are our board of supervisors aware of this particular program?
We haven't gone to them to say that. So I think that this would be something that if you think there might be an opportunity that you could see where it would be beneficial to Louisa County, you would want to get this in front of them to ask for their support.
May not have an answer to this, but I'm trying to think from a rural community standpoint, what we would apply for as a multimodal.
What I would, what I'll just put the bug in your ear for Louisa County is that you don't have any of these designated growth areas.
Correct.
So I would say that one of the things that your board may be interested to know would be about what funding opportunities might be available if there is a designated growth area. Otherwise, I think there could be some opportunities under component 4 for things like maybe thinking about, some of these places that maybe they're not designated growth areas, but you are seeing a lot of growth regardless.
And when you mean that, like, not designated as UDAs, because we have growth areas, but we just don't have UDAs designated, but unlike like Fluvanna does. But.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be called a UDA, but it has to meet the definition of a UDA in the state code,
Okay.
and it has to reference that. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Can they help you develop the boundaries for UDA, or is it, hey, here's our boundary, help us designate it?
I'm not sure about the actual specifics. I think they could help you develop the boundary. I don't want to speak for them. I'm happy to follow up. I think what they really want to help you do though is really understand like what are your goals for the UDA once it's defined.
Sandy, which one of these did you?
We applied for the MPO is working on the component 3 development accessibility planning process. So yeah, so they're supporting that. They're supporting the project prioritization and the needs prioritization process that we're going through. And I think that's also what the city of Charlottesville applied for their bike ped prioritization process.
For their what?
For their bike ped prioritization that they're doing.
Oh, okay, so that wasn't the multimodal one.
No, I believe they also applied for component 3.
I'm curious, would you think that, 100,000 seems like a lot of money to me. You think that you're getting really good value out of that?
I do feel like, well, again, we didn't have to bring anything to the table, to apply for it. So I do think that the amount of technical support that we're doing is really going to, it's significantly improving the quality of the plan that we're going to be able to produce based on if we had to put our staff resources into doing that portion of it. So I do feel like it's been really valuable to, have us be able to focus on putting our capacity to something besides the really technical parts.
Anybody have other questions? Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
We'll send a RTAC work plan.
So this is just kind of an update administrative thing. I wanted to let you know that the rural transit needs assessment, which is task 2.1 on the work plan, is mostly going to focus on the governance study. And that will be the rural contribution to the governance study. So there's probably not going to be a separate report. It'll be part of the governance study for that. I don't think that we need to do an amendment or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that the committees knew that that's what we were doing.
I think someone's trying to get into the meeting.
Thanks.
He missed it.
Where'd he go?
All righty, let's go around the table and find out what's going on. Start with VDOT.
I don't have anything to report today.
That's okay.
I did have a question, but I don't have anything to report.
We're okay with that. Louisa County, we have a plan unit development, Louisiana, a plan unit development to amend design on town center and Science Crossroad that could be going to planning commission at the same time October. Science Crossroad is a plan to increase about, I don't know the exact number, about 200 dwelling units in already approved plan master development. And then at Lake, we have 96 unit condominium with 130 room hotel, a rooftop restaurant with boat docks. So two large projects that obviously we're asking VDOT to take a look at for comments before they go to the planning commission in October, if that's when they go. We also, more importantly, Monday hired a planning associate, Curtis, and he'll be helping out. Louisa County's growing, so we need the help. And that's all I got for Louisa.
At JAUNT, we're in the midst of our transportation development plans that is due to be finished by January 20 something. And we just finished our community engagement initiative, so we're pretty pleased with how that went. We did rider surveys on our buses, we did community surveys out in the community, and then we also had online options. I'm guessing our response rate will be around 200 people, which is pretty good as far as these things go. So we're excited for that. I'm also sad to announce that this is going to be my last RTAC meeting. September 30 will be my last day at JAUNT. And it's been a pleasure serving with you all. And, thank you for having me. I tried to ask as many difficult questions as we could.
That explains that.
Everybody was very kind. But Zadie Lacey, we've hired as our new transportation planner at JAUNT. She'll be stepping in, and I think she's doing a great job here at
Nice to be here, thank you.
That's all I got.
I have an update from the online.
Yeah.
participants. Rick Youngwood says that VDOT Lynchburg District is conducting a new Route 151 corridor study. An update of the 2013 study should be completed by next summer.
Put that on the list of things we'd like to have as a talking discussion next year.
Not a lot to report from Albemarle County's rural area. We are in the process of our comprehensive plan update. It's a very long process. It's been going on for 5 or 6 months already, and it'll probably be going through the next couple of years. We're really overhauling the entire comprehensive plan. So that's going to be a big effort. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of implications to rural areas as we look at how the development areas in Albemarle County are sort of getting to the point where we're running out of space. And so I think that one of the big pieces that we're looking at is there something we need to do to add to the development area or allow different kinds of uses in what we previously called the rural area. So that's going to be a big point of discussion. I think that's really all we got going on. I mean, this is because of the fact that we don't have development that we allow in our rural area. It's pretty quiet out there, aside from things like these rural road discussions that we have. That's it.
Well, Nelson, we are wrapping up the public engagement portion of our comprehensive plan update. We had close to 900 responses to the community survey, which we're pretty pleased with. So in October, we're going to be, they're going to be presenting the results summary to the Board and Planning Commission. They'll be at the end of October, so look forward to that. As far as transportation goes, Rick, already said they kicked off the Route 151 corridor study, and that will be from Afton Mountain Road down to south of Beach Grove Road. And we're supposed to meet here within the next couple of weeks to discuss potential having additional restrictions for development in the Route 151 corridor, internal lane analysis and things like that. So that's pretty much it.
Can you run our next survey?
Here is where I'll plug the Berkeley group.
The other key is to only do it once every 15 years.
I did actually forget, now that I think about it, last meeting, we had not gotten the RAISE grant yet, so I wasn't sure if everybody knew about that, but we did make an application for federal RAISE grant for the 3-notch trail, which would connect from the city of Charlottesville all the way up into Nelson County. We did work with Nelson County. I got a letter of support from you all to the Hampton Tunnel, and that was successful. So it's a $2 million planning grant. That's going to take us to a conceptual level design and the full alignment for that entire trail. I think we've got a 2-year schedule for it, but we don't know exactly when it's going to start yet because we don't know when that money's going to be available to us. But sure, it'll be probably in the next year. So it's something that's happening in our world here.
Well, VDOT planning, I guess 2 things we mentioned. The first is smart scale. Working through the validation process on that. Many people, I know Chuck's working with all the folks for the counties. I'm working a lot with Albemarle and VDC. Hopefully we will be getting estimates to you all in the next 10 days or so. Because we all want to see what those are going to be. But we're moving forward. The other big thing is that there's a Ready, Set, Go grant you all may have heard about. I hope you have. It's mostly targeted towards localities under 5,000. The TAC program, which is paid for a lot of trails and streetscapes throughout Central Virginia, is trying to target localities and towns less than 5,000 money. Particular grant is geared towards and grant for these small localities, but it can be up to 50,000 localities, less than 50,000 people. But the goal being to try and help improve the next round of TAP applications that will be going next August. So the deadline for this is October 21st. I don't know if you will have any particular questions about that planning grant. Happy to talk to you afterwards if you did.
Just clarification. So you gave a 5,000 number for the community and 50,000 for the locality. So that would mean that the locality would have to be under 50,000 and the community would have to be under.
No,
5,000.
I mean technically, so there's a pool of money that does go to people, to localities less than 5,000. And actually this grant will be, it's weighted toward those communities, small towns. But for this planning purposes, they are allowing it to be up to 50,000. And the grant itself, the TAP grants themselves, we can range from Washington metropolitan area, but with the federal funding structure, there is a set aside for localities under 5,000, and that's what we've had trouble spending that money in years past.
So sorry, just to clarify, a big county with a small town could apply for that.
Apply, yes.
Thank you.
Scottsville,
For example.
Columbia,
Just
off the top of my head.
hypothetically.
Okay.
If I Google Ready, Set, Go, VDOT will be your website for it.
Lucinda also sent out the information to our
I
friends.
received some email stuff. It's not off right now, so yeah.
Just a couple quick updates with regards to RideShare right now. Statewide, it is Discover Transit Month, sponsored through DRPT, and next month will be RideShare Month. So we will be featuring and putting additional information out to all of the areas here about carpooling, vanpooling, further commuter services. Also this month, doing park and ride inventory, which does happen in most of the rural areas as opposed. So we'll have some of those counts. We are also looking to, we'll be assisting VDOT, and they are doing some more extensive park and ride, I guess, inventory parts. So we will be partnering with them as part of what we already do and just adding in the extra features and information that they're looking for as well. That hasn't officially kicked off, but it is there on the radar as we do those quarterly reviews throughout the year.
Sarah, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So when you, you do your inventories of those park and ride lots, is there also data that tells us, or do you ever do surveys that say like, where are you coming from and going to if you're using this park and ride? Do we have any information like
We
that?
have, to my knowledge, we have never surveyed the cars / vehicles there in the lots. Trying to think what would be the best way to even do that. We certainly have done some RideShare surveys, but that may or may not be capturing everyone in the park and ride lots. We wanted to capture everyone in the park and ride lots, but realistically, we know that that's probably not entirely true. So, yeah.
And that's, and that's,
Maybe an idea.
I mean, that's okay, I just, that was something I
Yeah.
thought about, but the reason I bring it up is because the park and ride lot on 29, as you're leaving the city, right there by, south of 64.
Mhm.
We have a large development proposal on the opposite side of the road,
Interesting. Okay.
that may make some access changes to the road and that could impact that park and ride lot for one thing, but they're also proposing that they will create a park and ride lot within their development.
Right, so just maybe relocate it to.
Yeah, relocate it or make a second one if you want to keep the one that's there. So I'm just curious, and we can talk more about this, but I'd like to get numbers so that we can start to think about
Sure.
what size we want to consider that for. And the reason I just asked about where they're coming from and going to is because we make access changes. So say somebody can't make lefts into this anymore or lefts out, things that can impact that kind of thing. So I'll get in touch with you, but I was just curious about this.
Yeah, I can definitely give you, very easily numbers for the last little bit. And then if we want to look at other ways to reach out to those folks to get some more quantifiable data, sure, we would be happy to partner.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Nothing really to share, I think Kevin said before. I've covered some calls from rural RTAC paving stuff, but nothing that's concrete, just kind of waiting on signatures to come through for some of these projects.
Well, this is my first meeting. I'm happy to be here, and I feel like I'm application every time. I think what Stephen said is pretty consistent, but I understand everything. So, if anyone has any questions, feel free to talk to me or Stephen.
Well, Tom, I think we've been pretty active with our first large utility scale solar facility. It's 130 megawatt, 52 AC alternating current facility. Yeah. In Scott, it's on state maintained gravel road, as you know. Speaking of those, with a 1-lane bridge coming off of 15. The other side of the access on Route 6 and Gold Line is wonderful, very good entrance, and that's where all their infrastructure would go. But the company bought property next to the 1-lane bridge road in 15 where there's no access whatsoever. So we've had a couple meetings with them this year. Yeah. So they are a large California company, experiencing their growth on the East Coast, dealt with a lot of the CEP solar at Enrico and SunTrack solar here in Charlottesville and all that. So, but it's been quite interesting. We're kind of mobilizing all the state agencies, Department of Forestry, Department of Game Life and Fisheries, of course, VDOT, and then all of our resources and working on this, but making progress. Can't tell you about some other things that are going on with it, but there may be some changes in the new year with the company we're dealing with, so let's leave it at that. But I think from our perspective and our research that we've been doing, and I know at Beza last week, you just gave a real good presentation. So Tom was going to check into some of that, but I would just say for a lot of us as rural counties, well, one, real quick, we're the second smallest landmass other than Greene County and the TJPDC. So
we are probably, once more of these projects come out of the 24 PJMQ, we are going to become the county that welcomes accessory solar and rooftop solar. Honestly, because a lot of the ones that are even smaller, like 20 to 35 to 45, 50 megawatts that we have that people are interested in doing are also even too large for our land mass. And we created a lot of things with our land use and definitions last September, and we're currently going through changes on solar taxation, and we'll set a limit of the number of acreage in the county and things like that. But from, I guess, reason I'm mentioning that is this main road that they chose to be on is a state maintained road, but they chose the wrong location of where to site their solar arrays. They also chose the largest stand of trees in the entire county to put their facility. It's kind of like where I used to work in Chesterfield County. If you took like about 2/3 of Pocahontas State Park and cut it down. Okay, so just generally as planners, I'm trying to say, we're definitely not in support of this project, and I don't think most of the state agencies we're dealing with are, but as we all have to bring things, shepherd things through a process, with them purchasing land on the east side and doing the infrastructure on the west side. As a planner, I don't have an opportunity to merge the two to make it a smaller project, so. You know, you can make a 35 to 50 megawatt facility all next to the infrastructure. So we're still learning a lot of the terms. The best, the battery energy storage, yeah. So they did a great job locating underneath the transmission line and where our two main transmission lines come together. So, but anyways, that's sorry, I don't mean to digress too much on solar, but we're you know, we're all interested in learning and figuring out some of the access done. And why I mentioned that next Thursday, there it is, the Fluvanna River Basin Commission is doing the conference at the Lewis and Clark Exploratory Center with Elizabeth Marshall from UVA and Chad Martin from GCR or DEQ, excuse me. So if anyone, that's open and it's still free, free and it's still open, excuse me. But other than that, a lot of our main projects are going on. We just started doing our funding stuff with the Albemarle Streetscape TAP grant. Starting that, going through the process. Got the letter from the central office. So that's about it. We have all of Colonial Circle, all of our other main projects all heard about before. Thank you. You have anything else, John?
I was going to actually ask Michael, Tom Fitzpatrick was our contact for this project. Is he not with VDOT anymore?
Yeah, Tom left last month. This guy, Greg Allen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I contacted him.
I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure if Greg or John Price, the other guy.
Okay.
Who might be working with you all.
Yep. I contacted
Okay,
Greg.
you already have their contact?
Yeah, I found Greg's info and contacted him. I think he's out of office currently, but yeah, this time he was really good.
He was awesome. Yeah, we miss him. He's left, sorry. Thank you.
But yeah, outside of all the solar that seemed to hit all at once for Fluvanna, we have a couple smart scale projects that are screened in and being reviewed. Like Douglas said, the TAP grant that we had approved is working on the funding for that. We're also in the throes of our comprehensive plan, finished about a month ago with public. We had four public open houses. So yes, this is going to be a mad dash to the new year, I think. Hopefully nothing crazy during the holidays, even more so. I mean, that solar project I was talking about is like almost 3,000 acres, heart of Fluvanna, not very good access, and it's like I said, even the small scale and solar projects are having a hard time with access just because a lot of them just want to pick farms that don't have great access and also not great support lines to get their work equipment in, which is a big one. I know with VDOT, you all get involved in that a lot, just having like proper access to job sites and updating and upgrading and improving roads and or just leaving them in the condition that they brought all their equipment been in has been a big challenge for them, so. I don't know if anyone else has that influx of solar like we have, but it's been quite busy.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me, I forgot to mention, so last week, the Virginia Association of Zoning Officials 32nd Annual Conference, they asked me to speak as a panelist, and give a 20-minute presentation to the members of the conference on solar, and kind of lessons learned along the way for Louisa over the last few years, how we created an ordinance. So if there's anybody here that needs information, you please reach out to I or Douglas. I know that earlier, I think it was in the year, or maybe it was last year, we gave a presentation on, because transportation is a very big issue when it comes to solar. It really is one of the top 5 things, along with the 32 other conditional use permit conditions and 10 pages of ordinance and all the other things. But I mean, it's really, it's an issue when you apply, it's an issue during review, it's an issue during site plan and then construction. So until it's built, problem doesn't really go away for transportation. So yeah, I just wanted to thank Douglas. Thanks for reminding me to bring that up. And we're here as a resource for you. And also for the MPOs and the PDCs, you know, if you could be reaching out to them about something else, then if they go, hey, if you know somebody who can talk to you about solar, we'll have them reach out to us. So part of that, I said in the last meeting, I have no problem with us sharing our knowledge with northern and southern PDCs and MPOs, because the more people we know, the better off we're going to be. So sorry, I'm going to be quiet and move along.
Well, one other thing, just real quick, if you guys want to know more about solar in central and definitely south side of Virginia, Cardinal News, I think they're a new newspaper out of Lynchburg or that kind of area. They have been doing a lot of really good reporting and series of writing on it. And basically, think of all the data centers that are up in Northern Virginia. They think of us in the south side and, you know, south central part of our region as the area to do solar facilities. Because it's mainly flat. I mean, an area they're doing our large one, it's not flat, but it's still Piedmont and everything, of course. But take a look at some of that information, and also Elizabeth Marshall's survey that they just did and launched this spring was really helpful for some of the resources statewide. But you know, there's opportunities. I mean, there's, for instance, like Charlotte County, I can't remember the acreage, but they've done some humongous. I think it was like over 1.5 million panels on what was that, like 21,000 acres or something? It's huge.
Talking about the APA conference, I think it was around 20,000.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, I hear you guys talk a lot about access and taking down forests to put that up. Are those the major issues? I mean, are you supportive of the large utility scale stuff if it's in the right location or in the land use, or is it problematic for you even just as a land use?
We're supportive. Let me say it this way. I don't know, this is rural transportation.
I apologize, but it's interesting.
But I'll say this, the ones that we did with SunTruck Solar, and they're a great company, don't get me wrong, but the ones that we did with them that are 3 and 5 megawatt facilities next to CBEC substations, we're having problems ENS wise and construction wise with those. Okay, so you can only imagine 10, 20 volt that, you know, we would have with working with the, whatever size we get it down to. The technology about the battery alternating, you know, all that, it's wonderful to learn about and understand, but I generally, we're very supportive of it, but I think generally even the industry people that we deal with, we're all like, I don't want to say it like flying blind, or we're doing stuff before the infrastructure is there, and so to speak. Like, you know, for instance, I'm a planner, so I'm very supportive of, like, look at real quick at California, where they want EV cars and only EVs, you know, and all that. And then just a week or two ago, they said, don't plug your EV car in, we don't have enough chargers. Okay, I mean, so the charging network in the Caltrans or whatever is not enough. So, you know, I think what we're learning in all the conferences and all the things that are coming out, is let's slow it down just a little bit for everyone. The people who are installing it, who are creating it, people who are reviewing it, and the state agencies that we work with. But let's slow it down a little bit. I mean, there's definitely a need to increase green energy facilities and recapture all of that. It's just trust and respect your topography. Some of the areas that we ask them the questions about how we're going to put the solar panels in. Some pretty steep slopes and areas where there's lots of they're not getting near the wetlands because they can't, because the slopes they're up on the or for instance they'll select the really flat area, and by the way it's right by the bridge, so everyone's going to see it. You know, so I think it's just also the California and out west companies coming east, and if you have, you know, like Edwards Air Force Base kind of area where my dad was at one time. Hobby does, you can put panels up for miles, you know, lake, dry lake beds. But here in the East Coast, it's a totally different. A lot of the folks in North Carolina and Virginia, I think, know they get it and understand it. So we're trying to educate them. But I guess the main thing is let's let all the General Assembly things, changes keep coming through, but let's work on them to be implemented, you know, as best we can. With the environment we're in. But I think it's great. We're just, it's really, I don't want some environmental damage things done that we're doing, and we're creating these things for better the environment, right? Right. That's all. Sorry, Michael.
And I guess just a little bit extra for Savannah specifically, like the biggest thread that all of our citizens have is like keep the rural feel.
Yeah.
So having a huge utility scale solar farm right in the center of it, it may not appeal to that thought. But also I think part of the explosion, and this is what we learned from these conferences and stuff, is that it's become incredibly more efficient with how solar power is generated and captured now, with like dual-sided panels, and they're tracking, and they're much cheaper to produce now. So I think that coupled with a lot of the federal funding is like really pushing them to like really try to get in while they can. So those two things are kind of clashing in our county as well. Like this huge solar project, we haven't got to the public phase yet. We're still working with all the state agencies before we even show this to the public, because we want them to be as well prepared as they possibly can be, because there's going to be a ton of questions, put it very mildly. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add on to that.
So.
Well, we can talk on that because we want to go up there and Louisa and Spotsylvania and see what y'all have been doing. Thanks.
Topics for next meeting.
Yeah. Go ahead. So I've been talking around, and some of the other rural transportation committees have been looking at their, I can't remember the name of it, I can't look it up. Their like environmental mitigation plans. We just updated ours in the TJPDC, and I thought maybe I could get somebody from the state to come speak about it, and I'd help identify the roads in our area that are going to be prone to flooding.
That would be excellent. That would be a great topic, especially since TJPDC is currently working on the update.
Yeah.
I offer, I don't want to put everybody to sleep, but I can give a 20-minute presentation that I gave to Bezo here if we're struggling for topics. So 20 minutes of solar. Now that I've threatened everybody with that. Have any ideas that they would like to have for conversation?
Well, can I mention one thing? Is that I think we spoke at all of the jurisdictions in here, well, except for Albemarle, about the Safe Streets for All program. So we were able to successfully submit an application that included all 6 of the jurisdictions within the TJPDC.
Excellent.
But what I wanted to make sure that you all know about is that regardless of the outcome of that grant, I mean, I believe that it will be very competitive, but regardless of the outcome of that grant is we reached out to VDOT, and starting in January, late January, they are going to start doing some crash data and safety analysis for us. And so regardless of what happens with the Safe Streets for All, we're going to be able to use those resources to develop a very detailed data set as far as what is contributing to crashes. And there will be some like stakeholder engagement. One of the things that they'll be doing is they'll be coming to each locality to have an on-site meeting, and you know, we'll hope to start working on building some collaboration among different departments and agencies as part of those meetings. But that will be something that you all will be hearing about starting probably maybe early next year, maybe a little bit more towards March.
Do you want me to try to get a guest speaker on solar from like maybe California or someplace where they've done it a lot?
That's not necessary. We could get Dominion Energy here. They were at the conference with me and they gave a presentation on battery storage. We'll talk offline about that. I was thinking that it would be interesting to have an update on what challenges you had on transportation section of updating your comprehensive plan, especially with Route 151. If you're willing to perhaps give a presentation sometime next year as you get further along.
Sure.
I'd like to hear more about the $2 million grant and what you're all planning to do and kind of the synergies and how you went along applying for that.
Yeah, we do have a little presentation that we've given to like the LUPEC and our board of supervisors. You guys, I mean, it's only like 10 minutes of talk. But
10 minutes works for me.
I'm happy to bring that over and go through it.
And I know Rick Youngblood has a presentation about the Route 151 corridor.
Okay.
As well. So that's a pretty short one. I think he gave to our board this past month too.
See, all I have to do is threaten to speak for 20 minutes. Those are all good ideas. And I want to thank the NPO, PDC, TJ, everybody for reaching out. I appreciate you all reaching out to everybody and trying to get us more guest speakers and offering the same. Like, we're willing, if PDC wants one of us to come and talk about solar or trails or bike or something, we're willing to do it as long as it fits the schedule. So, yeah, you got anything going on you've been giving presentations for? Bow tie?
No, not recently.
All right.
Tom, real quick, I'll just say, this was a group I wasn't aware of before, but this will be the third year I've gone now. It's the Rural Planning Caucus. It's fantastic. It's a smaller group of people, but since this is the rural group, I thought it would share. And we're also looking for a building official. So, just throw that out there.
We are looking for building inspectors.
With your powers combined, you
Yeah.
have a whole building department.
Anybody have any other topics or ideas they'd like to share? Stephen, I'd like to thank you for all of your difficult questions over the past few years. They have been excellent and very difficult. Does anybody have any last minute housekeeping items or things you'd like to discuss with the whole group? Jim's been on the call. He can reply. Jim, you got anything?
He's not here.
Oh. He heard me. I was speaking. He left. He's already seen the presentation. But he was there last week. All right. Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so,
You drove all the way here to talk to us.
No, I drove all the way across the street, actually. Just a quick public comment is that PC is watching the solar issue very closely, and I think we're looking at externalities and figuring out how to get ahead of those. And surprisingly, we hadn't really thought of transportation, that whole bucket of externalities, but the magnitude of the issue is gigantic. So our CEO just informed the staff that it looks like the data centers alone could drive as much energy demand as Virginia is using total. So like a doubling of Virginia's power usage just because of the data centers. And the reason is because the transatlantic internet trunk line comes and lands in Virginia, and then it spreads out from there. And then we also have our own transcontinental fiber optic lines. So there's a lot of future interest in having data centers here. That could also be a land use issue here in this region, but definitely the solar.
Have you encountered anybody who specializes in either data sensors or that conversation?
I'll see if I could, you interested in like panelists or?
Yes.
I'll ask around.
Because that, data centers, they're not here yet, but I don't see why they wouldn't be here in the near future.
Correct, yeah. So I'll ask around and communicate with Louisa.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you like to reach out to, like I said, Douglas or I or others about solar, you're more than welcome to. If we give a presentation,
Yes.
run ideas, we'll make sure to invite you.
I have on my list, getting a hold of your best practices or your presentation already. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, well, I motion to close the meeting. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
So yeah, we heard up to 5% of the land mass that we're getting at under solar.
Yeah.
That was our whole, our entire service area is 5%.